Well, I think that the question, what we're talking about at the moment is whether we should legalise gay marriage. And really the issue is what we're talking about. We're talking about civil marriage, not religious marriage. So the question we're asking is, does this provide any rights or benefits to gay people that they wouldn't have otherwise had? The answer is no. The other interesting thing about it is that no one's actually asking for this. There's no great clamour in the gay community for gay marriage. We have civil partnership. That does everything that's necessary. And in fact, a Comrades poll that's coming out tomorrow suggests that 70% of people in the country at large don't want marriage to be redefined. Because this isn't about equality. If it were a question of equality, then I would be all for it. But it's not really about equality. It's about redefining an institution that is the cohesive glue of society in a way that may yield consequences we have no clue about now.
Well, what consequences do we have no clue about now?
Well, there's no way of knowing. It's very difficult to tell at this point in time what the ramifications would be of breaking down an institution that holds society together.
We're not breaking. It wouldn't be breaking down an institution. Boy, George, what's your response to that?
It's celebrating it, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing. It's like isn't it a good thing? The church is always going on about the importance of marriage. It doesn't matter whether you choose to marry a pot plant. You know, if you want to call yourself married, you should have the right to do it. I mean, I think gay marriage is a bit conservative. But if you want to do it, I uphold your right to do it. And it's just a word. You know, why can't you say, we're married if we're two men? You know, it's just such a pointless debate.
Well, yes, why withhold the word married from gay people? Or from one person in a pot plant?
I don't really think it's about... I don't really think it's about the word. The thing that annoys me about this particular debate...
But it is about the word, though, isn't it? Because you said there were civil partnerships that convey all the same, rights and benefits as being married, that you're happy that gay people are allowed to do that. But so it is the word married, or the concept of marriage, which is very similar to a civil partnership, that you think gay people shouldn't be allowed to enter into.
I do think that there is some significance with the word, and I think that it represents an institution that is very commonly understood to be the union of a man and a woman for the procreation of a child.
But the thing is, though, society's really changed. Most people used to think it was wrong to be gay, that if you had that inclination, you should suppress it. Our views in society has changed. It seems to me that the view of the Catholic Church hasn't changed to the same extent. Surely that's not something we should defer to. That's something we should rightly reject.
Well, there's an argument that, religion is religion, it has rules, it is a set thing. Maybe it's not always such a good thing that it bends to the fashion of the times.
It may turn out to be wrong.
Well, it may turn out to be wrong, it may not turn out to be wrong.
There are lots of other
Simply
things.
setting it against the sort of moral relativism that, and the fashion of, moral fashions in society,
We're trying to get away from in terms of encouraging girls to go into science as a career.
We hear this a lot from scientists, you hear a lot in particular from female scientists, but the fact is that there is some reason to suppose that there is an advantage to being a man in certain subjects. There's reason to suppose that gender essentialism, biological determinism, whatever you want to call it, the fact that there are male brains and female brains, may indeed have some basis in science. Now, this is sort of thrown out of the window completely by feminists and female academics who just refuse to accept that there's any reason whatsoever why there might be a gender imbalance. Two things on that. One, actually the science is very much still out on that. And two, if you look at equality in society, if you look, for example, at Bangladesh versus Norway, what you notice is the number of women in science and technology subjects actually goes down as societies get more equal, because women simply don't make the same choices that female academics and feminists would like them to. Women actually don't want to go into the sciences on the whole, and when they have every option available to them, they tend to choose not to.
Of course, I'm not talking about him and his comments as him as a person. I'm talking about what it does in terms of the environment that we're bringing girls up into, and a responsibility that people in positions of authority like he is to actually not perpetuate these negative images about women. It's really damaging. When girls do a maths test in an environment where they've been told that they're not going to be as good as girls, if they do a maths test in that environment and they identify themselves as girls, they actually write their name as female on the test, they won't do as well in that environment.
Yeah, but you see, you're conflating two different things. It is true that teachers in general mark boys down, but it's true that in STEM subjects they mark boys up. When you sort of do the blind tests, when teachers know the gender of the person who's studying, boys get mocked up in the sciences.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the stereotype threat, which is when girls identify themselves as being female by writing their own name on the top of the test, they will do worse. It has been shown that they will do worse because they know that they feel that they will probably fail.
Better at university. More girls are going. Well, okay, so we have to ask.
Girls perform better at university.
You have to ask if this is really a problem. More women are going to university. They're getting higher grades at school. They're getting higher grades at university.
20% of all
more women
A-level
graduate.
students are
Women in their 30s
20%.
earn more than men for the same work in their 30s in the UK and the US now. They are 2 to 1 more likely to get a job with the same qualifications. Where's the structural bias against women here? I don't see the problem here. What I do see actually is a very reasonable complaint from a lot of young men, not my generation maybe, you know, I'm sort of 10 years older than them, but from a lot of young men who are going to university, going into the workplace, and they don't recognise the world you're describing because it's not their experience. When they go for a job, they are discriminated against because people are desperate to hire women. When they go to university, more women are doing better all around them, and they feel as though being held up to feminine standards of behaviour, being whacked on Ritalin because they're too boisterous in the playground, or not getting the same support that women do at university, that society is actually architected very much in the other direction.
Would you like to make a final point, and then I'll come to you?
Of all A-level physics students, only 20% are girls. How can you possibly say that we're in an equal environment where girls are coming out and studying science as much as boys are? We are absolutely not, and we need to make sure that girls feel that science is for them, and it's not just for boys, and they're not being pushed out of it because of who they are and because they might cry and because they might be self-reflective.
But this is based on an assumption that there ought to be some kind of gender parity. My suggestion is that there isn't. We don't complain when women dominate subjects like nursing. We shouldn't complain when men dominate subjects like physics.
We're going to have to leave it.
Edinburgh called Zero Tolerance, which is teaching gender equality to childminders so that they can teach children that they're equal, they have equal opportunities, and they do it specifically to reduce violence from men to women when they're adults. We need to start much earlier than men.
OK, Milo, you want to come in?
Unbelievable, astonishing sexism. We have to teach young boys not to be boys so they won't be violent.
Why is being violent being...
Get out! I'm sorry. Like, gender, we teach boys and girls that they're the same, and that's a problem. They are different. When we do experiments on young babies and even on related animals, we know that certain children go for certain toys. Boys and girls are different. To give you some context for all of this, you have to understand a little bit about the history of feminism. There have been 2 main strands.
And here is our local expert.
Of course, because of course men aren't allowed to speak about anything that isn't to do with men.
The things
except
that you've
no one's
already
really
said.
interested in.
Already said indicate that you know nothing about
All right, well,
it. So you've already
I'm going to talk to you a little. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the problems that men are experiencing in society. And since you're not a man, perhaps you could like to give it a rest for a second. So there is a wider context in which men are suffering slightly. Even 10 years ago, it would have been ridiculous to say it. But very recently, we've seen a lot of structural advantages to being a woman crop up in education, in the workplace. Under 30, women earn more than men for the same work in the UK and the US now, which is an extraordinary statistic and something that people have to be very, very carefully convinced of because it sounds absurd. But there is a sense in which men, particularly young men, probably men our age, haven't necessarily experienced it, but younger men, 20-year-olds, there's an enormous problem. I read about this last year. I call it the sexodus, of men checking out of society, checking out of relationships, giving up on women, giving up on careers. They don't bother to go to university anymore. Now more women go to university, women get higher grades at university, more women graduate from university. Yep. All of the traditional imbalances between men and women have flipped, and very recently.
No, that's
and when
incorrect,
young men,
when you go
may I be allowed to
in the
finish?
business,
Sorry, I'm talking
correct.
about men, darling.
And you call them darling? How incredibly rude. And now you think it's funny. Well, this is exactly the problem. This is institutionalised sexism, and you're just sitting here doing it flagrantly and without even apologising.
Well, we just heard that it was an essential characteristic of men that they were violent a minute ago. So
no,
I guess
we did not. Nobody
That's exactly
said
what
that.
you said.
Nobody said that.
My
That's just a lie.
My point
anyway, wait, I'm getting out of here. I tell you. Look,
so I'm tempted to come with you, Nick.
If anyone,
where boys are judged to this sort of emotional. Sort of feminine standard, where we've all got to be sort of emotive and talk about our feelings. The consequences of that is 1 in 5 American boys put on Ritalin because they're boisterous in class, because they're held up to this sort of touchy-feely feminine standard that isn't how boys behave. And what happens is we end up with a generation of drugged-up young boys. And if you look at the statistics, the number of kids that are on Adderall and Ritalin, whatever, in the United States, and it's beginning to happen here, it's monstrous, and it comes from this sort of philosophy.